Alright everybody, hello and welcome as always. I am Sean and this is In The Mix, episode 56 of our FC Isle of Man series, and like a little bit of, spoiler, a little bit of back end behind the scenes magic for you. It's pretty much the same day as the last episode, but everybody wants to be playing Football Manager this weekend. It's currently free to play for everybody. If you haven't gone and checked it out, please go and do so. Hopefully it's still available and free to play by the time this episode comes out. I'm not 100% sure, but go and check it out. Wonderful game and definitely worth your investment if you do eventually decide to purchase it as well. I will be playing it all weekend. I'm sure a tremendous amount of people in quarantine, isolation, just hanging out at home all around the world are going to be doing the same thing as well. So very exciting time for the game, very exciting time for the community to keep growing as well. And we want to continue a little bit in that episode. And also in the spirit of kind of, new players coming in and checking out either this content or the game itself, I'm going to show you guys how I do like long-term scouting once we eventually get to like a regen phase. I've spoken previously about how I would try and pick up players from the free transfer market via searching for attributes and things like that. In earlier episodes, now I'm going to focus on when we're switching to regens and looking to pick up talented players from other academies around the country. How do I focus? Where do I allocate my resources? Because we don't have a tremendous amount of money, so we do kind of have to be a little bit more specific in the way that we look out for things. So first, what I'm going to do, let's recap. The last game that we did off screen, Wigan, a 1-0 win. They smashed in an own goal. One of their defenders cleared it into the top corner from about 6 yards out, which is fantastic for us because we didn't look like scoring pretty much outside of that one. But a good 1-0 win. That does kind of push us back up towards 14th spot again, and we have a game in hand. If we win that game today, which is a tough ask, we're playing Rotherham away from home, we will jump up as high as potentially 11th position, albeit with a very negative goal difference that we do have to kind of try and focus on boosting as much as possible in the second half of this season. But what we're going to do before we get to that is I'm going to show you guys how I would usually go through my scouting arrangement. So first and foremost, I'll show you guys the add and remove leagues, which is what we've currently got loaded up. Basically, each time we would get promoted, I would take that league out from the following year until we get to a point where, we hit our plateau and we're kind of in Sky Bet Championship, English Premier Division. What I've also done is I've added in the top 5 divisions from around the world. And once we get up towards a championship sort of level, I will add in like Brazil, Brazil, Argentina, Serbia, potentially North America, a couple of Scandinavian countries, like a bunch of little different divisions that could potentially give us high-level wonder kids that we want to try and bring in to build the team and the squad out that way. In the interim, while we're at like a Sky Bet League 2, Sky Bet League 1 level, what I do is instead try and focus on the English Premier Division teams that are potentially going to be releasing some high-level talent from their academies to see if, one, at the scouting level, are they going to come across and be a valuable first-team member of our squad? Are they ready for first-team football, or do they have the relevant potential to not just be a potential championship player, but maybe even a potential Premier League player as well? So if you look at our scouting network, what we've got here, I don't have any senior packages selected. I don't have any youth packages selected, mainly because I would rather, when you're in lower divisions, a lot of that wage packet go towards your wage budget, your staff, whatever else, and improving the quality of the actual group and the club itself rather than the scouting network. So effectively the only scouts that I've got on board at the moment, I've only got 2 or 3. They're just focusing on next opposition and also tasks that I would delegate to them. So if we look at the shortlist at the moment, this is mostly just players that I have spotted that are either playing international football, which is another good way of doing it, having a look at, is there anyone in the England squad that's currently, like under the age of 20? Is there anyone in any of the lower European nations that's currently a teenage player coming through? For example, this guy from France, Remy Forvigueux, I don't know how you pronounce that, worth £44.5 million at 19 years of age, looks to be a phenomenal prospect. But even if you went and had a look at like the under-19 squad, they've likely got some 15-year-old players that are sitting in here that have very, very high potential. So there wouldn't be any harm in adding these guys to the shortlist and having a look. You're not going to get any French players for that because they're likely already at a Monaco or a PSG where they're earning a tremendous amount of players. But if you find someone that might potentially be, here's a good example, like a young Greek player, they may be someone that you could potentially pick up, bring across to your club. At the moment, because we're League 1, I can't go and scout outside of the country at the moment. But as we get up to a championship level, we might expand that a little bit further and have a look. And it's also good to have a look in senior squads. Is there anyone that's jumping out in these particular age groups that's currently a teenage player playing first team international football? That usually means they're either currently a good player or have very high potential, and that's why they're trying to bring them through. So this one here, Mr. Vicious is coming through the Red Bull Salzburg Academy, which we know is super high quality, only 17 years of age, central defender, already looks to have some great stats and attributes. We could get a scout report on him and keep an eye on him for one, either a lower cost transfer in future or potentially once his contract's up in a season or two, looking at bringing him across. So That's one way of doing it, and I will usually go and do that by region. I'll have a look at Europe and flick through all of their first team squads, see what's in there. We can go and do the same thing for South America. I will do this once we get up to like a championship level. You can see the Brazilian national side's got like 4 or 5 20-year-old players in there, all of whom look to be very, very talented. You really want to focus on the ones that are playing in Brazil still, not these guys that are already at Man City, Southampton, whatever else. And even the under-19 squad, you'll see there's like a couple of 16-year-old players here. They're probably very talented, ones that we could look at to potentially bring in once they hit the age of 18. And if they're going to continue growing and developing at the same rate that they currently are at 16 years of age, they're likely going to be wonderful, wonderful players that you can bring in. There was a guy we had, George Sosa, who we picked up as a 16-year-old from Uruguay last year. We had a guy named Nen who came through a very similar system with our #United save. He came from Brazil. We signed him, I think, 3 years before he actually arrived and got a work permit. But once he came through, a wonderful, wonderful player and a fantastic wonder kid to have on the books. So that's always a good way to filter it, because usually international managers and even international youth teams, if I can get the sentence out correctly, have usually got a pretty good eye on what players are currently developed to a certain level to be playing international football at that stage. So there's always a good way to kind of flick through there and have a look at what youngsters are coming through the ranks. But what I tend to do is focus purely on England for the time being until we get to a championship level. And once you're at that level, it's really about how do we develop and expand our scouting network to be the whole of Europe or the whole of the world to pick up the best young talent before they make their moves to bigger clubs. And you might still have players come in that will come to your club, and then you potentially sell them on to an Arsenal, sell them on to a Real Madrid. That does happen. You can't avoid it sometimes if the player actually does want to move. But effectively, if you're trying to focus on high potential players that have good current ability, the best way to do it is through that free transfer end of target market until you actually stabilize yourself in a division and have a massive wage budget, have a massive transfer budget, and can work from there. At the moment, we've only got £1 million in the bank. We're not a rich club by any stretch. This is the healthiest we've ever been financially, and that's with League One football money or League One revenue money or TV revenue or whatever you want to call it. Our wage budget still only $23,000 a week. There are players in this division that are getting paid like a quarter of that a week. So we are still very much working from behind the 8 ball in terms of finances, and a good way to leverage that is by using the youth in the transfer market or youth in the free agent market. So what I would do, usually around January, is I would jump into each individual first team squad and I would have a look. Let's start with Arsenal. Let's start with A. They're always in the Premier Division. They shouldn't really ever get relegated. I would filter by all players. And as far as the general info goes, I'd look at their contract details first and filter by the expiry date. So any guys that you can see across here, they've got their contract expiring in 2027, the end of this season. I would go and have a look and say, okay, which of these players is actually a young player that we potentially want to look in? So now that's filtered by date. You can go back to general info and it'll show you all the detail, all the player detail. And the big one that I usually focus on are these players on youth contracts, because usually they are the ones that are going to probably leave the club. And anyone that's around 18, 19 that has potentially already signed a first team contract, it's unlikely that they're going to want to come down a division if they can actually get a transfer fee paid for them. So you can see here, Southend have already bid $245K for this guy. It means that he's likely going to want more in wages than we can currently afford. It means that he likely wants to get a percentage of a transfer fee, and that's why he's signed a full-time contract. But for the rest of them, all of these youth players, you can just add those guys to your shortlist and start building effectively a large-scale network of players that you know their contracts are up, you know they're currently undervalued, and potentially you may get scouting reports back that show them as being, 4-star current ability players, 5-star potential. What I'm going to do is, magic of editing, I'm going to jump forward now and do that for all of the Premier League sides and put together a list of players that we might need before we set our scouts out to go and actually have a look at these players. All right, and just like that, we've put together a full scouting list, which I'll show you guys now. So we may not necessarily have the best academy structure. We may not necessarily have the best home ground talent. All of our regions have been absolute garbage so far. But what we do have now is effectively a full list of players that are coming off contract at the end of this season that potentially we could go and look at and offer early contracts once they get set for release to bring them across straight to the club. That leverages the fact that Arsenal probably has a really good academy. We know that both the Manchester clubs have great academies. We know that Newcastle, Norwich, Southampton, Tottenham, they will occasionally have some absolute diamonds that come through that youth structure. that may not necessarily ever make first team football at their current club, but they could do a wonderful, wonderful job for us at a League One championship level, or potentially they just need that platform to play in League One to eventually make the most of their potential and get to championship football, to get to senior football at a Premier League level. You can see there's quite a few here that are already getting offers from other clubs, so there will be a way to kind of like filter and look through exactly who is going to actually come. There's a few that are in injured status. I wouldn't want to pick up like a 17, 18-year-old player if they're going to be out for like 9 months or 10 months or anything like that. It looks like most of these guys have relatively small knocks and injuries that they're working their way back from. No like ACLs, anything like that that's helped them out for a while. And then what you should also always do is make sure that you filter it by position so that you can have a look at, okay, there's a good few goalkeepers, there's 5 or 6 here on top of what we already have in our current goalkeeping stock for next season. Got a few right backs, there's a couple of left backs, a few central defenders in here as well. Is there any position that jumps out as not potentially having a whole bunch of available players? A few right midfielders, a few left midfielders, a few central midfielders, that part's great. Some attacking midfielders here as well, and some strikers in there too. So it looks like this, in terms of players that are going to get released from their clubs over the next 12 months, there's quite a few in here that potentially are going to offer us a good value and cover quite a few different positions. If there is a reduction and you know that you desperately need a left midfielder, but you aren't seeing any that are like high quality positions here, expand it out. Go and do the same thing for championship clubs. Go and do the same thing for other League 2 clubs, League 1 clubs if you're at that level, so that you can make sure that you're covering all the positions that you need. And the worst thing that could happen is that you get a scouting report and it doesn't go anywhere. So for example, these guys here that we've already scouted, we know that they're not going to hit that 5-star potential, which is the barrier that we want to set. And we'd also probably want to set maybe, like a potential ability of at least 2.5 stars before we wanted to look to bring them in. Otherwise, they're effectively just the same value as the players that we currently have in the squad that are already under contract. You only ever really want to recruit for improvement. So we're probably looking at, maybe these guys down the bottom here as getting moved on to other clubs and not getting their contracts renewed. But effectively, we've already got quite a few players here that are at 2-star potential ability. We'd be better off just keeping them for another season than trying to bring in an additional player that may still not necessarily hit the relevant heights. So if we filter by current ability here, you can see this guy, Ian Eady's the right winger from Norwich, the centre back here from West Ham as well. We're probably going to take them off the list because they're not an improvement on what we already have. Again, all just common sense stuff, focusing on really 2.5-star current ability, 5-star potential, but it works well for me, and I think I've got a pretty good success record in terms of getting from lower divisions up to the Premier League, and this is usually the strategy that I apply when it comes to a free transfer market. I don't worry about scouts because like star ratings and whatever else are subjective anyway, and if your scouts are shit, they will give you a bad rating, but I do think it helps you filter down a list and prioritize targets, and a lot of the time, that's the biggest issue. Not necessarily locating players, but how do we actually find players and decide which one is the right one for the club? And this is just a good filter to apply. There's always scenarios where you might have, let's use this guy as an example. Actually, I'll get 2 in the same position. Who have we got? This guy, Craig Miller, 2.5-star current ability, playing as a 10, could potentially play as an advanced forward or a deep lying forward if we wanted to use him in that role. You can see here, he's got mostly double figures for all the stats that we'd be looking for. There's a couple of mental ones here that we need appropriate work, but if we had him working as a deep lying forward and had him working on his passing range, there's no reason that he couldn't become a wonderful deep lying forward playing as a proper number 10, whereas you might have this guy here, Robert Ramsey, who is also a number 10, but we might not be able to bring him in because he's come through the Crew Alexandra system, looks to be a high potential prospect, wants a fair bit of wages already, may not necessarily be a player that we can get, but we could get the other one and get him to 4-star current ability relatively quickly if he's a diligent trainer, if he's got good determination, all that sort of stuff. Always apply your own common sense because your scouts never apply common sense. They just give you facts and data based on what they think a potential is. And the majority of the time, that potential is based on their scouting attributes anyway. So like always just use this as a filter to try and give yourself a list and something to work towards, not necessarily the be all and end all of what you're going to do, especially when it comes to current ability potential. I think everybody who's ever played the game has had a scout tell them that a player is a 5-star player or 5-star potential. And then once they sign them and arrive at a club, they're only like 3.5 star. It happens to everybody. So always make sure that you're applying that common sense filter through it. What we will do from here is we're going to take all of these players and we're going to get full scout reports on them. So we're going to assign a scout just into our scouting pool for the 4 or 5 scouts here to work through until we have full knowledge. And we're going to keep an eye on these guys on the short list as they work their way towards their end of contract. Now, some of these players will get offered contracts by their club, and there's nothing you can do about that unless you've got the cash to pay their, compensation fees by offering them contracts yourself. Or alternatively, you can keep them on your shortlist as like a player that you might want to bring in on loan or something like that for the next season. But effectively what I'll do is every January go through, have a look at who's getting released from higher division sides in both the Championship and the Premier League, get scouting reports on them, filter through if they are a worthy target for us, filter through if they're a realistic target, because a lot of players still won't come and play League One football if they think they're above that level. But at least give myself a hit list of players that I'm going to go after each year. And while at the start of a save, you can kind of use your own knowledge and your own experience about other good players around a divisional level, by the time you get 7 or 8 seasons in, you just don't have that knowledge base anymore, because so many of the new players that are in the game are new gens or regens, whatever you want to call them, and you kind of have to start from scratch in terms of your scouting network. If, let's say, in the next 2 years we do go up to a higher division, we will probably expand out our senior and youth packages as well, so that scouts could potentially bring us some players from around the world if they're applicable. But for right now, I don't have 120k a week to be spending on that sort of stuff. I don't have 108k a week to be spending on English coverage. I'd rather we use that money to boost our account status, boost our finances, and continue to grow as a club. The other portion for us, and it is kind of unique, is that we are also still paying off a loan for our stadium, which has been fantastic for us this year. We've made way more money than we were renting over the last 2 or 3 years. But once that bank loan is paid off, and if we're on track to be ahead of that, I think at the moment, it'll be a massive weight off our shoulders and will effectively be a profitable business from there on out. So anyway, that's how I do it. These scout reports are going to continue to filter through. I'll show you guys in the next episode what our eventual shortlist looks like and how we're eventually kind of continue tracking players as we work towards the end of the season and their contracts expiring. I will also just quickly filter out the guys that we know don't necessarily have contracts ending this season, just to kind of give us a little bit more direction in terms of our filter. Now, because I've spoken for what feels like an hour at this point, we're probably just going to do one game this episode, and particularly because we are kind of finishing straight off from where the last game was. We're playing Rotherham, who are in second position. They were in first position up until the last game. If they win this match against us, they will go back top of the division. So you can tell there's going to be quite an incentive for them. We did quite well with our positive tactic last time out. We're going to use that again in this match, but Magic Betting, I'm going to jump forward now and have a look at the 2 lineups. Right, so just like that, we're a little bit further forward. There's a couple of changes from the last couple of games. Johnson, of course, in goal. Taylor and McCluskey is the central defensive partnership. Preston Kelly and Wright as the fullbacks. Our back 5 has pretty much stayed consistent all throughout the course of the season. Sometimes they've done well, sometimes they've struggled, but they are a good group, and I'm excited to keep them again together next season. We've got Dean on the right wing, Taylor at left wing. Wademan and Munoz will play as the 2 central midfielders. I thought about switching these two, maybe Wademan doing the deep lying role, but he seems to just be a yellow card magnet when he's in that particular role, and I'd rather not sub him if I don't have to. Knowles and Record will continue up top. Record having a wonderful season. We're into January now, and he already has 18 goals in 29 appearances, which is fantastic for a player that started the league season at 17 years of age. Looking at the Rotherham side, a very strong lineup. They've got Sam Johnson in goal, of course, ex-Manchester United, ex-Aston Villa, ex-West Brom, now at Rotherham for a good few seasons. An excellent player at this level, and his 1.5 value, despite being a little bit older, kind of reflects that. Edwards is their leading player for the season so far. Tom Edwards, ex-Stoke City junior. Looks like he came through that academy and then fell down the divisions with Preston, Nottingham Forest, and now Rotherham as well. Looks to be fairly solid on that right fullback side. And Rodell Richards is another one I want to focus on. He has very high potential at the start of the game. He starts the game at Tottenham as part of their youth academy. You can see here, as far as the world is concerned, like this universe, he's dropped down to Wigan, Exeter, Oldham, Doncaster, Wigan again, and now Rotherham, but a very, very good player. If you can get him early and get him developing to make the most of some of that potential, he's an excellent one to pick up. And you can kind of see with some of the quality that we've already looked at, they do have a very good side. Adonai is the guy playing up top. I thought he might be a little bit more impressive if he's keeping everyone else out of the side, but Nigerian forward, came through the Rotherham Academy, it looks like. 17 acceleration is fantastic. 17 determination as well is very, very good. So they've definitely got some quality about them, and you can kind of tell why they're towards the top of the division. Currently, I'm going to say Rotherham have won. No, let's go with this one. The recent form standings have Rotherham in 3rd place while we're 11th. Let's raise our game to their level. A few have responded positively. Let's calmly tell the front 2 as well. We have faith in them to hopefully get us an early goal and put us on our way. First highlight here, it's Johnston picking up the ball. Our Johnston, Kieran Johnson. Good pass out to Sam Taylor, who could crossfield switch it here. Instead he goes to Munoz, who works the crossfield switch to Dean. He's 1v1 now against the fullback, skips past the challenge. Well, we could have squared that one up. He had, I think, Knowles sitting there at front post. He would have had a tap in had he found him, but instead, like all wingers do in this game, they strike from a wide area, which is the bane of my existence. So as things currently stand, a point in this catch-up game would move us up to 11th spot. And while our goal difference isn't great, points clearances at the moment, getting out of that kind of quagmire in the middle would help us a lot. Knowles has gotten goal side and he finds the finish. A wonderful strike from Daniel Knowles, 12th goal of the season. And maybe, just maybe, I'm not saying this is an actual thing, I'm not saying this is a game mechanic, but maybe the fact that I just put about 12 strikers on our shortlist and getting scouting reports for them is enough incentive for Daniel Knowles to pick up the pace a little bit in terms of his scoring. But yes, the defenders give us this one, but he still had to do quite a bit and he still had to find the finish. And he's done quite well to put us in the lead just as we hit the half an hour mark. Corner here, Marnie to take. Sykes with the header, who's clipped the post before it heads over. Pretty poor defending there. Defence was slow to react to the ball in. Can use Edman Morshout just to give everyone some focus through to half time. Wademan looks pressured by that. He's also struggling for form a little bit. Fitness a little bit at the moment. Another deep header from Rotherham. The keeper should have had that one covered. Throw in here very deep for Rotherham on the right hand side. Ball to Marnie. Back to Edwards, who we spoke about in the build up. Ball into midfield is picked up by their number 10, whose name I think is Hassan Ali. Now out left to Rodell Richard, who we did speak about at the start. Hangs the ball front post for Adeniyi, and he just heads past the near post, I should say. So referee calls half time. We've had 5 shots, 4 of those on target and 39% possession. They've had 15, 4 and 61. I'm going to go into the dressing room now, and I'm going to assertively say I'm happy with the performance so far. Keep it up. I'm not going to complicate stuff too further. We're going to give it another 10 minutes, but you can already see here Wademan's 61% conditioning isn't great, and a couple of yellow cards here for Ricky Dean and Sam Taylor as well. So we're going to have to make appropriate subs at the appropriate times here, I think, as the second half wears on. Corner here, Marnie to take. Front stick runner again, and Sykes has gotten there first. We're still using our zonal corner routines, but we have conceded, I should say, quite a few goals from set pieces over the last month or so. It's a good ball in from Marnie, had good dip on it, and there's a player right there. Sykes just got above him though. Height, you can't buy height, and Munoz may be a bit too little to be marking that guy as he bursts forward towards front post. Right, we're through an hour. I'm going to go risky. I'm going to trust the 2 wingers to not pick up second yellow cards. I'm going to bring on Carl Robertson for Wademan, who's really struggling for match fitness at the moment. He'll play as the deep line playmaker. Munoz will move to the Messiah. I'm going to bring on Coates for McCluskey, who's struggling a little bit, 6.5 match rating. And we're going to give Mark Birch, I think this is the first episode that you guys have actually seen him in. He's going to come on alongside Knowles, the goal scorer, because Record has just struggled a little bit to make an impact. I'm going to passionately say I have faith in you to make a difference. They've at least all responded positively. Let's also use our Get Creative shout. And all it would take is 1 break and 1 finish for us to get the 3 points here. 1-1 draw isn't the worst result in the world, but after leading the game, you kind of always want that little bit more. Statistically speaking, they've been all over us though, so hopefully we can kind of hold on here for the last 10 minutes and not throw away what was a good early lead. We used Edman Morshout for the last 10. Most people seem focused. They do as well. Taylor with a free kick here. Coates flicks it on and it finds Birch back post. Is he onside? That's what we're going to see. Surely the winning goal, and it's his 2nd goal of the season. He's scored one for us earlier on in a cup competition, and he might have come off the bench and made himself a hero here. Good header from Coates, flicks it back post, and Birch, there were 2 men there at back stick. All he really had to do was tap that one home, and there's an immediate highlight here, so this might be about to break our hearts. Iakovidi with the ball at left back into Akinola. Now O'Hara in midfield, someone's got to come to him. Robertson does now. Good crossfield switch to Hassan Ali, and he's clipped the inside of the post before Preston Kelly forces it out for the corner. So still a danger here, boys. We've got to find our focus. Marnie with the ball in, head right with a good header away. Adeniyi with the ball at left wing. Dean, I thought Dean had gone through the back of him there for a second. We've got numbers around the ball here. If we work this correctly, Knowles loses out to O'Hara, who then puts it out into touch. If he had just released that little one down the channel, maybe Dean could have headed to the corner flag for the next 5 minutes or so. Throw-in continues though. Knowles loses out possession and the highlight comes to an end. 4 minutes to be added on. Can we hold on here for the last few minutes? And the referee's called full time. That is a massive, massive win for us. Probably the biggest one we've had in an episode for a while. Hopefully that's starting this week off on the right note. 10 shots, 5 on target, 41% possession. I'm not going to lie, we have stolen it from them quite a bit. 23 shots, 9 on target, and 59% possession for Rotherham. 2 goals from a counter-attack and a set piece have given us the advantage here. Passionately, I'm going to say, really special, lads. Nobody gave you a chance and you've performed magnificently. But this is just another scenario and another frustration I'm having in this season of this save. We are doing so consistently well against these top sides and then dropping points against these sides down here towards the bottom. We drop points against Mansfield, Burton, Shrewsbury, Forest Green. We scrape past QPR. But then we go and play a team that's challenging for the title and we do very well and get a good result against them. So it does see us up into 11th position. We are a few games behind the teams that are currently sitting in the top 10. But I think that's going to be our focus for this week, trying to focus on that top 10 finish. And of course, with like one little corner of our eye starting to cast our focus to next season, having a look at who in the squad we want to keep around, who at the squad is going to maximise their potential and is ready for another crack at League One football. And also working through our shortlist to see what targets we want to try and bring in on free transfers once their contracts finish up. As far as the next episode goes, I think we'll only jump forward a couple of games again. We might play this game against Plymouth because they beat us 5-0 last time out, and then the game against Southend is our Tuesday episode. Then we'll do the end of February for Wednesday, end of March for Thursday, and finish off the season for our Friday episode to see how the league season wraps up. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. That is the portion that I appreciate the most. If you're a super fan and you want to support the content that little bit more and you want to go that extra mile and you're just that kind of caring, giving person, you can subscribe to the channel. We are edging towards 200 subscribers. Or alternatively, you can drop a like on this video to please that YouTube algorithm, get more views on it, get it higher up the queue when people search Football Manager 2020 on YouTube, and potentially as they start searching for FC Isle of Man as well. Our links are just over there on that side if you want to check out any of our Twitter interactions with the community or our regular Sunday night Twitch streams. But as always, I've been Sean and I'll see you all again in the mix-up.